Have you ever wondered how plants reproduce and continue their species? It's a question that's intrigued scientists and curious minds for centuries. After all, plants don't date or marry, so how do they ensure their survival and propagation? Well, the answer lies in the fascinating world of plant reproduction. Plant reproduction is a crucial biological process that allows plants to produce offspring, ensuring the continuity of their species. And it's not a one-size-fits-all process. Plants have evolved an array of diverse and ingenious methods to reproduce, each tailored to their unique environment and lifestyle. These methods fall broadly into two categories: asexual and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is like a plant's version of cloning, producing offspring identical to the parent. On the other hand, sexual reproduction involves two parents and leads to offspring that are genetically different. Intriguing, isn't it? So how exactly do these processes work? Stick around to find out. Asexual reproduction sounds complex, but it's actually quite straightforward. Let's dive into the world of cloning, regeneration, and the miracle of life without the need for a partner. First, we have binary fission. This is the simplest form of asexual reproduction found in single-celled organisms like bacteria. Picture a single bacterium dividing into two identical offspring. It's like photocopying, but with life forms. Next, we have budding. This is where a small part of the parent organism grows out as a bud, which then detaches to become a new organism. Yeasts are good examples of organisms that reproduce this way. Imagine if every time you had a pimple, it turned into a mini you. Then we have fragmentation. This method is like a starfish losing a limb and growing a whole new starfish from it. The original organism breaks into fragments, each of which develops into a new individual. Spore formation is another fascinating method. Here, parent plants produce tiny, tough-coated structures called spores. When these spores land in a suitable environment, they sprout into new plants. The puff of a dandelion in the wind is actually it releasing countless spores into the world. Vegetative propagation is a method we often see in our gardens. This is when new plants grow from the roots, stems, or leaves of the parent plant. Picture a potato sprouting fresh shoots from its eyes, or a strawberry plant sending out runners that grow into new strawberry plants. Finally, we have artificial propagation by tissue culture, a method used in modern laboratories. Here, a tiny piece of plant tissue is placed in a nutrient-rich culture medium where it grows into a whole new plant. Imagine taking a single cell from a carrot and growing another carrot from it. These various methods underline the versatility and adaptability of life. They show us that nature always finds a way to carry on, to grow, and to flourish, even under the most challenging conditions. So that's asexual reproduction, but what about sexual reproduction? How does that work in plants? Well, stay tuned and we'll dive into that next. When you think of plant reproduction, you probably think of flowers, right? But do you know what each part of a flower does in the process? Let's dive into the world of flowers, where every petal and stamen has a role to play in the story of life. First up, we have the sepals, the green protective cover that shelters the flower bud. Think of them as the bouncers at the club, only letting in the right guests. Next, the petals, the showstoppers, their vibrant colors and sweet scents are there to attract pollinators. Now, let's meet the stamens, the male part of the flower. The stamen is made up of an anther, where pollen is produced, and a filament that holds it up. It's like a little pollen factory. Lastly, the pistil, the female part of the flower, includes the stigma, style, and ovary. The stigma catches pollen, the style is the runway for pollen to travel down, and the ovary is where seeds are formed. Talk about a power trio. And that's how every part of a flower contributes to the process of reproduction. Now, let's see how the magic happens. Ever heard of the birds and the bees? Well, in plant reproduction, it's more like the winds, the water, and the insects. Let's dive into the fantastic world of pollination. Pollination is a love story of sorts, where pollen from a flower's male parts finds its way to a flower's female parts. This process can happen in two ways: self-pollination and cross-pollination. In self-pollination, a flower does a solo dance. The pollen from the anther, the male part, transfers to the stigma, the female part of the same flower. It's like sending love letters to yourself, but for plants, it's a reliable way to ensure reproduction. On the other hand, cross-pollination is like a romantic ballet. It involves two flowers, often from different plants. The pollen from the anther of one flower travels to the stigma of another, ensuring genetic diversity. This dance, though, needs some helpers, and that's where our agents of pollination come in: the winds, the water, and the insects. Wind-pollinated plants like grasses and conifers have light, feathery pollen and exposed stigmas to catch that pollen on the breeze. Water-pollinated plants, like some types of algae, release their pollen directly into the water. Insect-pollinated plants like roses and lilies have colorful petals and sweet nectar to attract these little helpers. And just like that, thanks to these agents, pollination happens. But what's next? Now that we have the pollen where it needs to be, what happens next? Well, the pollen grain starts germinating on the stigma and grows a tube down into the ovule through the style. This tube carries the male reproductive cells to meet the female ovule. This meeting, my friends, is what we call fertilization. It's like the pollen grain is sending a little love letter down the tube, and when it reaches the ovule, boom, a seed is formed. But wait, there's more to this story. Sometimes plants need a little help from us humans to get their pollen to the right place. This is where artificial pollination comes in. In horticulture and agriculture, we often use artificial pollination to ensure the right pollen gets to the right flower at the right time. This can help us grow bigger, better fruits and vegetables, or even create entirely new varieties of plants. Imagine being a matchmaker for plants, ensuring the perfect pollen meets the perfect ovule. It's a vital role that helps keep our world green and growing. And there you have it, the fascinating process of plant reproduction, from asexual methods to the intricate steps of sexual reproduction. Who knew plants had such complex love lives, huh?